We're going to examine what it means to be a leader. We're going to talk about leadership both in ancient Israel and today. The setting of our story that we're going to focus on takes place in Jerusalem. And there's a couple of names here that you're going to have to be able to remember and to pay attention to in order for the story to make sense. The first one is Rehoboam. Rehoboam was the grandson of King David and the son of King Solomon. And so in our passage for today, Rehoboam is getting ready to become the next king of Israel. And leading up to this time, Israel was living in a very prosperous moment. King David, as we talked about last week, had brought the Ark of the Covenant, the Ten Commandments, and the Golden Box to the city of Jerusalem. There were, during this time, two different tribes, northern and southern Jerusalem, and King David brought them together and made them one. And then King Solomon, following King David, began to acquire wealth. He was really good at making money, and all of these projects and infrastructure started to be built, some of which still exist today, including the temple in Jerusalem. And there was a sense in the country of Israel during this time that things were moving along well, but people were getting tired. Because King Solomon, in order to get all these projects done, kept on drawing on the strength and the labor of the Israelites and their expertise in craftsmanship. So there's a prophet now whose name is Ahijah, and he realized the direction that the country was going. And so the prophet came forth, and he said, King Solomon, be aware, because there is another leader named Jeroboam, a leader of northern Israel, and I'm afraid that one day he might divide this kingdom that we have worked so hard to put together. So King Solomon listened to the words of the prophet, and then his response was to exile the prophet, to kick him out of the country, to send him somewhere else. So you can think of this as, and if you were to interpret in modern day times, there's a leader who has a cabinet. They give him words of advice, and then the advice givers are kicked out of the country. So now we turn to our scripture for today. King Solomon has died, and Rehoboam is made king. And this is our scripture for today from 1 Kings chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. Rehoboam went to Shechem. That's a place in northern Israel. For all of Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. Pull up the next line there. When Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard of it. Now remember, Jeroboam had been kicked out. He was still in Egypt, where he had fled from King Solomon. Jeroboam returned from Egypt. And they sent him and called him. And Jeroboam and all in the assembly of Israel came and said to Rehoboam. Now this is key for this morning. So remember, Jeroboam had been kicked out, or it might be a leader and the prophets and all this other stuff, and now King Rehoboam is getting ready to be made the king of Israel. And so the people are all coming to this big event. It's like an inauguration, big-time party. And they said to the incoming king, in reference to his father, King Solomon, they said, "Your father made our yoke heavy. Now, therefore, lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke that he placed on us, and we will serve you." And so King Rehoboam said to them, "Go away for 3 days, and then come again to me." So the people went away. So right away, King Rehoboam faces a test. Very first day in office. And the test is this: will he lighten the load of his citizens? Now, the times are different, right? But we all know what these tests are like. Everyone in this sanctuary is a leader, from the youngest to the oldest. Leaders in our place of work, leaders in our preschool, leaders in residence homes, leaders in wherever it may be, in school. We all have moments when, as leaders, we are tested. Moments when we have to decide what sort of direction we want to set. So King Rehoboam invites his cabinet to come and talk to him. Now, his current cabinet is the ones who have been in office for a long time, all the way through with King Solomon, the ones who helped unify the kingdom and start all these different building projects. And King Rehoboam says in the scripture, it says to the elders, to the wise ones, "What do you think I should do?" And the recommendation that they give to him is very clear and right to the point. They say, lighten the workload, turn over a new leaf, tell the people that a new style of leadership has arrived. The advantages are huge. You really need to do this. The people will be loyal to you forever. So that cabinet goes back to wherever they were, and Rehoboam asked his friends to come with him. The scripture says that his friends are the ones that he grew up with. And Rehoboam says, you know the situation here. You know that I'm the new king. You know they've asked me to lighten the workload. The elders came in right before you. They said to go ahead and lighten it, and we'll have loyal servants forever, loyal citizens. But what do you guys think? I mean, we grew up together, right? And they say to King Rehoboam, well, you don't want to appear weak on your very first day in office, do you? Double down now, increase the work, and show them who's boss. Make your father proud. So, motivated by greed and by power, Rehoboam takes the advice of his friends. And before long, the kingdom becomes divided. Those fractions still exist today, and Israel is no longer unified. Now, we can look back on that ancient story and say, King Rehoboam made a bad mistake, and we all would have done totally differently. Because all he had to do was give up just a little. He just had to show a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of kindness, a little bit of humanity, and a willingness to listen to those and trust those who had gone before. But who likes to admit, maybe on the very first day of the job, that you don't have all of the answers? What type of leader, what type of king is willing to show vulnerability less than 12 hours in the chair? And then let's bring it to our own lives. How do you lead and make decisions and reflect with others? Not many of us like to show any kind of weakness. It doesn't matter if it's from ancient Israel or to the modern world today. We construct and show, and for most of the world, cultivate this carefully created persona. And the raw sides of who we are, the emotional sides of who we are, what Carl Jung called our shadow side, those sides usually only come out and are exposed to the ones that we love the most, even though they deserve it the least: family, friends, whoever it may be. We don't want to be the one person in the crowd on Sunday morning who doesn't appear to have life all put together. We create this persona that we want to carry. Over the years, though, I have learned that the best way to burst this bubble of persona is to just have children in church where you serve. They out you at every moment they get. They know that at homework and bedtime, I'm not the perfect parent. But if they would just listen, it would go much easier. Now, the former theologian Eugene Peterson, he once said that when Christian believers gather in churches, everything that can go wrong sooner or later does. Did you get that line? When Christian believers gather in churches, everything that can go wrong sooner or later does. Outsiders, on observing this, conclude that there is nothing to religious business except perhaps business, and dishonest at that, but insiders see it differently. Just as a hospital collects the sick under one roof and labels them as such, the church collects sinners. Many of the people outside the hospital are every bit as sick as the ones inside, and the same is with the church. So churches are, as a rule, not good models of behavior, but rather they are a place in their goodness where everything can be brought out into the open. One of the things I really like about Community Christian Church is that we are a place where we can really be who we are without any pretensions or fluff. So King Rehoboam made the wrong choice, right? He listened to his ego and not his soul. He listened to that persona of who he wanted to construct, not who he really needed to be. The ego is always going to long for acceptance, for the number of likes on a Facebook page. The soul is going to long for connectedness. Here's what I wondered this week, though. If he had a chance to do it over, do you think King Rehoboam would have made the same choice? Think about in your own life, perhaps, the last great big mistake that you made. And if you haven't made any mistakes, come talk to me later after the service. But think about this in your own life. Would you have made a different choice? In a moment of weakness, when you attempted to cover a flaw, would you have done something else? So a researcher from the Pew Research Center asked Americans this question, and the question was this for all age ranges. The question was, assuming you could travel back in time, would you go back and make different choices in the mistakes that you have made in your life? Most people said yes. They would like to go back and change the mistakes that they made. But not all said this. There was one distinct age group of individuals who said that they were not much interested in going back and making different choices. Any guesses what that age group is? Those over the age of 65. And that's really interesting, I think. Almost across the board, if you were younger than 65, you said you would have liked to go back and make different changes. But if you were older than 65, you were content with the way that things played out. So I thought about this, and my guess is that when we are younger, we think to ourselves, if I only had that chance to do that one more time, I would have made such a different choice. But then I wonder if when we become older, if we start to see that moment, that decision in our lives, allowed us to see God or others in a deeper way or a fuller way, and even though it was painful, we wouldn't have made the choice any other way. And that gets to the counterintuitive point of our scripture this morning. We grow more in our faith by making the wrong choice than the right choice. Isn't that counterintuitive but totally accurate? You grow more in your faith by making the wrong choice than making the right choice. There are moments in life where you'll wish that you could have shown more vulnerability, more humanity, a greater willingness to dance like Darren does, freely and joyfully. And then in those moments when you make mistakes, you think, oh, this is just the end of it all. But in those moments of miscalculations, sometimes you can see the greatest moments of mercy and of grace. So the next time you think perhaps you're traveling down the road you didn't want to go down, remember this. In moments of uncertainty, and in moments of vulnerability, in moments when we have to admit that we don't have all of the answers, those can be some of the greatest moments in life with God. Through Christ, we say together,